Hi guys, I wanted to make a third video to go along with my environment and hero card creation videos, because in the hero vid I was like, oh, making a villain character card is pretty much exactly the same as making a hero character card, except it really isn't. I've learned a lot just in the last week or so. Yeah, so this is not going to be quite so much about making a card as fixing it. To wit, take a look at what I've got up here. The two variants of this card have very different looking HP, and actually HP is one of the things we're really going to concentrate on today. The oversized card templates I found out are created by LinkFox. You can find them in the same thread on BoardGameGeek as Koga's original templates at the bottom of page 2 in their own post. For comparison, here's the base villain art card template. It's very simple. It just is meant to have the image, the nemesis icon, and then, you know, villain here in this box and whatever title that they have, and then of course there's a separate template for the art cards. But this is 2018 and the oversized card templates exist, and we're doing this on Tabletop Simulator, and there's no reason not to have these. They look really good, and I like, if nothing else, not having to flip two cards when it's time to flip the villain. So let's take a look at some of the things that I've done here. Nightmare Moon's name up here is in a font I found called Wicked Queen, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely freaking perfect for this. And with villain names, you can get really, really creative. I just did a shade from white, not to the color of her setup boxes. The color in the middle is that color. And then I did a yellow outline, then I did a black outline around that, dropped a shadow. It looks really great. I'm really happy with the way that came out. Her HP, I shaded like you would a hero card, and that's not what you're supposed to do. It's actually supposed to be pure white, but there's a catch. So let's take a look over here for a second. There was a post on Greater Than Games, I think this is from 2015, and I'll put a link to it in the description in case you want to check it out yourself. But there was a point at which they brought out new oversized cards with new artwork. You can see on the right here this awesome looking Citizen Dawn versus the old kind of tired one that they're using on the digital game still for some reason. I don't know why they're not using these. The first thing to note is that the HP on old Citizen Dawn is beveled. That is, there's a little bit of a shadow on the inside of it in the white part that is slightly different colors around the edge. It's slightly different shades of gray. This is true on the right with the new Citizen Dawn, except if you look closely, it's a completely different font. I do not know what this font is. Nobody knows what this font is. I scanned like a dozen of my own physical oversized cards into my computer and ran their HP boxes through 5 different font identifying programs, and none of them could find an exact match. So without knowing what it is, I have decided to stick with armor piercing. Back here on the left again, armor piercing is used for Citizen Dawn's name. On the right, she's got something a little more interesting, and that's become the standard for villain oversized cards ever since. I like being able to do the interesting, you know, wacky thing, and I'm going to show you a couple things that I've picked up to make these names look nice. But the thing that we're going to look at now is how to do a bevel. And again, this is in GIMP. If you've been following all the links that I've given you, the thread for Koga's templates, I bumped it with these videos, and veteran card designer Meat showed up and he was like, why don't you just use Inkscape? The answer is because I'm lazy. But the answer for you probably should be why not. The fact is, Inkscape is a vector program, whereas GIMP is not, and it is apparently a lot better at working with text. So all the stuff that I'm about to do is way hard. This is doing it the hard way, but I've gotten good at doing it the hard way, and I don't want to give that up for whatever reason. So we're going to go ahead and bevel some text. I'm working directly in this 140 point armor piercing. What you can do is right-click your text layer and hit discard text information, which basically turns it into a picture of the number 80 instead of actual 80 text. If I go back over here, I can't get back into that to modify it as text. Next thing we're going to do, and this is where it gets really dumb, go up here to transform, flip the image horizontally. We'll take an alpha to selection, just like we would for the gradients, and then over here in filters, you go down to decor, hit add bevel, and now this is where we get to learn together. I don't know what size bevel we're looking at here, so I'm going to use the Citizen Dawn for reference. I think it's going to be about 4, maybe 4 pixels. So we'll do 4 pixels. You want to click off work on copy, because if you don't, then it will make a duplicate of the image with the beveled text in it, and you don't need keep bump layer. So let's go ahead and hit that, see what comes out. I honestly cannot tell. That doesn't look too bad, so we'll take and transform, flip it horizontally again, and see the weird thing is when you do a bevel, it comes out to the right and bottom, and we need it to the left and bottom. I don't know why there's no option to change it. That looks about right. So yeah, 4 or 5 pixels for your HP bevel will be about what you want. So let's go ahead and fix up Nightmare Moon's shit. So before I get into fixing Nightmare Moon stuff, let me show off the rest of this card. I mentioned last time that if you've got multiple nemesis, you want to shrink the nemesis icons. These are about 60 pixels, but there's also 6 of them. The more that there are, the smaller you need them to be. The other really big thing, and I might not even get into this just yet, is working with H, which is not something we had to do with heroes and didn't show up in the environment video for whatever reason. But yeah, let's go ahead and start fixing stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to be real sneaky. I'm going to highlight the existing text box with her HP, because again, once you save an image, its text becomes not text anymore, to put it simply. And actually, you know what? I need to do this in a different image anyway. So we'll go ahead and do a 70, discard the text information, flip it, alpha to selection, filters, decor, add bevel, and we need a thickness of 4. Actually, let's try with the thickness of 5 first and see how that comes out. You know, I don't think that's too much. Taking a look at that 0, yeah, it's actually very pronounced. Okay, so let's make that a thickness 5 bevel, and this layer has been rastered, I believe is the term. It's no longer text, so we can just copy the whole thing, go back over here, paste it in, and then position it just right. So the nice thing is the layer, which was already present, that outline is still there, and since I pasted this into the hit point layer, I don't have to do anything else to it. That's what our hit points look like now. So that's fixed. And if I didn't mention it before, I decided to go with Nido Kino text for the name and armor piercing for the HP, if only to show that it's not really an actual card, just in case there's any legal trouble that comes up, like any whatsoever. I don't think Greater Than Games is a litigious kind of company, but you never know. That being said, points. The title needs to be 40 point red state, blue state, bold. The villain, setup, gameplay, and advanced are all 40 point red state, blue state, italics. Those all come in the oversized template that Link Fox made, which is very nice. The next thing we're going to do is mess with her text, because if you look at Daybreaker's card over here, this is the variant, I've got it all nice and spaced out. There's a line break in between each paragraph. It's a lot easier to read that way. Now granted, I also got lucky with her image, and I think I'll talk about images in a little bit, in that she's up here at the top. You've got a good space between her name and where the gameplay text starts. Now, you know what? I mentioned it. Let's go ahead and talk about it now. The thing about images is, let's go ahead and remove everything so you can just see the image by itself. The good thing about images is you don't have to fill up the entire thing. Looking at the bottom down here, there's a gap where there's nothing colored in, and that's because the graphics cover that up. That's the bottom border of it. This part down here is just a solid color fill, because the image only goes from the top of her horn up here to down there. It cuts off the fire part way. There's no extra space coloration. So I did a color fill after selecting something in the background, and I used a noise filter, which is why it's not like a solid color. Did the same thing up at the top, because once you put the whole thing in there, you don't notice this break up here quite so much. So it's a lot of graphical acrobatics to get things to look the way you want. Now, of course, this is less of a problem if you're commissioning art or something, which if you do, I highly recommend that. That's a great idea. I just don't have the money for it. But coming back to Nightmare Moon over here, let's take a look at her image, because I did some wacky crap with that too. I got lucky enough that there was this awesome image of just her eyes, and it's from like an old storybook, and then you notice it kind of tessellates down this way, and that's because I just copied, the part under her eyes and pasted it down the way. So when you put the graphics back in, you don't really notice that it's repeating. Like, you can kind of tell if you know it's there. You can see that this is light, and that's that's light, and this is dark, and this is dark, and this is dark. But in this case, her game text is so long that I have a very limited space to work in between her name and all the things, so I might actually have to mess with her image as I go through this. And I took out the H's because they were in the wrong layer. So let's go ahead and redo this real quick. And I don't know what this is going to look like, so we're going to work in red state, blue state, 30 point, and I'm probably going to want to pull the line spacing down by quite a bit. Alright, so there's the whole thing. Looks fine. Alright, so I have separated this out into paragraphs. I might want to change a bit of the spacing. So, like with the hero card, italicize the names of characters, and like with the environment cards, I'm going to be bolding things like start, end, and also when. Anything that you need to bring the player's attention to. So let's go ahead and reduce that line spacing a little bit, because I want to be real stingy with my card space here. I don't want to cover up those eyes any more than I have to. I can move them up a little bit. Obviously, we're going to have some issues here because the text is overlapping. We need to change the size of the box. So this is going to require copying all of this, cutting it, and then moving it up. And we're going to want to kind of count to see how much we move this, because I'm going to have to move Old Pony's tail, I'm going to have to move all the setup text, and I'm going to have to move these Nemesis icons the same amount. Okay, so I just moved it up 134 pixels. Boom. Done. That being said, we're not done, because the way that you want to design your villain character card is from the bottom up. You put the advanced text in, you adjust the advanced box, then you do the gameplay, adjust the gameplay box, and so on and so forth. That will tell you how much room you have to work with in regards to the image size. So now we're going to take and copy a big chunk of the gameplay box and just move it up. So unlike in the other templates, the border is just part of the graphics layer, and that's why there was, you know, a big space where you could see behind it. So that being said, this is about where I want it to be, I think. Yeah, okay. So the last thing we need to do is, I'm going to do this in the layer because layer number 1 is the Nemesis icons, and I'm going to be moving those later. I'm going to go to layer, and I'm going to go open up the H icon. Now again, I want to say that like the Nemesis frame, this came with the templates that Koga made. I'm not actually sure though. I might have downloaded it from somewhere, and I don't know where if that was the case. Now, we're going to learn something else. Let's take and crop this down so it's just that. I did this text in red state, blue state, 30 point. It's supposed to be 32 point. I'm cutting corners wherever I can to save text space. So normally I would just take and copy this, make sure I'm in the layer, paste it in, and you want to put 2 spaces in place of the H. If you didn't notice, I had it typed out as capital H in parentheses. Just delete that, replace it with 2 spaces, that's about enough. But you notice it's hanging below the line, it's not quite in the right place. I'm not liking this too much, so we're going to delete that. I'm going to go back into here, take out one of those spaces. So because I'm working in a slightly smaller font, the H is a little too big. So it's 35 by 35, and the thing is, I don't know how much to reduce that by. So let's give it a shot. Let's resize that and go down to 30. That's a little better. That's encroaching on this just a little bit, but it's about centered evenly, and the H is always a little bit bigger than the text anyway, so that's probably good enough for our purposes. I've got another one in the setup text. We'll go ahead and do that next. So now the setup, you don't need to worry about spacing out into paragraphs because it's one big thing, one and done, and you can see, you know, I put it into the setup box. It's taking up a little less space than it was originally. I'll be able to shrink this down and gain some of that real estate back. It's free real estate. So I'll replace that H with 2 spaces, italicize Nightmare Moon. So let's go back down to graphics, and again I'm just going to select about half of the purple, cut it, paste it, because everything that I do is going to cover up what's below it up to a point. Okay, so I moved that down 40 pixels. That means I will have to move everything else a grand total of 94 up to get it to sit correctly. Okay, so I just took and moved up the Nemesis icons, and you might notice that down here the layer is moved up, so we'll just take and right click on that and hit layer to image size. Now it's back to the bottom where it's supposed to be. So all that is set up, it looks nice. We just need to take and go back to the graphics layer, copy these side borders, and paste them in to cover up the gaps. So this isn't looking too bad. I might take and move the eyes up just a little bit so that they're not, you know, let's just go ahead and do that right now. There we go. So the irises are not hidden behind anything. And I don't have to do anything else because you can see down here, the layer ends in the middle of the advanced box. If I take out the graphics, you can see, you know, there's empty space there, but it doesn't matter because we can't see it. And so that's fixed. All we need now is to go back to the layer, and I can actually just take and copy this H and move it over to where it needs to be. So that's all fixed, and that's actually where this card needs to be complete. I think that's everything you need to know about setting up / fixing a villain character card. I have a whole bunch of stuff open though because I need to go change all of this out and hopefully release it soon. Let's go ahead and save that, remembering to Control-Shift-E for export. Save it as PSD and a PNG, and we're set. I did want to try a thing, however. I'll go ahead and open up the oversized template. One very weird thing about this template, I don't know if you saw that, there's these zeros up here. There's no actual text layer, so they're just hanging out up there. You'll need to delete those when you use this if you're not going to have 3 zeros for HP up there. We're going to try doing something. Let's go pick a random, interesting looking, oh, that looks good. We'll make a villain called Killazad, which, no lie, is actually a villain I have planned. So the first thing we can do is alpha selection and do the perspective tool over here, which is Shift P. Take and click on it, and then you can grab these corners, pull them in, it'll show you what's happening. I don't know if that's even or not. And now you have that cool, you know, coming at you kind of thing. Although it leaves a slight outline. So then we can go over to the Killazad layer, delete that gets rid of the outline, and then we can use that for our text because it's not actually text anymore. So that's one way that's similar to what you've got going on with Citizen Dawn over here, just the other way. Now, of course, there are 2 separate templates for the back and front oversized, but all I tend to use is the front. Sometimes I mess this up and I use the front when I should use the back. The main difference is the front has the setup box, the back does not. But the way that I do things, I like to change setup to when flipped to this side, which you can see right here, and doing that is just like resizing the keyword box. Some people I've seen just do when flipped so that you don't have to resize it, which admittedly looks a little bit nicer because then it's the same size as gameplay in advance. That's a nice way of having the information separated out, so you go, okay, shuffle all cards under this card into the environment deck, move all relics from the villain trash into play. You only have to do that once per game or once per side, so there's no sense in having it down here in the gameplay where, you know, you're going to have to worry about things happening every round. One nice thing about using the front side for the front and the back is that you can take and do your name and HP and then just leave it there. Same thing with the nemesis. The only things that'll need to change are the image and your various text boxes, and of course when flipped to the side if you want to do that. And if you don't want to do that, it's not too big a deal to just take and highlight the whole setup box and just delete it, and then take and, you know, fill in those and take and move the villain box down. But the important thing about the templates is it keeps a nice even positioning between all the boxes. That's the thing you really need to do. You can always measure that yourself. And there's one last thing that I wanted to talk about in regards to villains, because villain cards are exactly the same as hero cards. Just use the villain card template. It's got the blue checkers instead of the green or orange. I don't actually remember which is which, but whatever. You know how to deal with H. That's pretty much the only thing that's going to be different. When you're ready to publish your work on Tabletop Simulator, there are a couple ways you can do this. You can upload it to their cloud. Basically, there's a tool when you go to make the decks in Tabletop Simulator. It says, you know, local or upload. You click upload, it will upload the image to the cloud and then paste the link for it into your dialogue there. And that way you can have things on Tabletop Simulator's system. I don't know if it loads any faster. The main downside to it is you can't do anything with it once it's uploaded. All you can do is delete it and then re-upload a new version if you've made changes to something, and then you have to go and redo the entire thing. Anybody who's got that saved in their own Tabletop Simulator is going to have a hard time because they have to go back and find it once they're like, hey, why is this thing broken? That's number one. That's straightforward and simple. Number 2 is use an external image hosting site. I know the Reaver uses Imgur. You can use Dropbox. I use Google Drive. Dropbox is actually probably the best way to go. So when you're dealing with Dropbox, the nice thing about it is that the files are stored on your computer. So if you make any changes to them, those changes will propagate to the cloud and then to whatever is linking to them. To use Dropbox, you open up your Dropbox folder, whatever you're trying to get to, right click it, hit copy Dropbox link, and a little thing should pop up saying the link was copied. There it is. Copied link to Bad News Smiles 2. So when you paste it in, it looks something like this, and all you need to do is change DL equals 0 to raw equals 1. That allows you to link directly to it. Pretty simple. The only thing that is keeping me from using Dropbox for my stuff is I don't know how they're going to react to, oh, lots of people are linking to this thing from another thing. Like, is that gonna... I don't know if there's a bandwidth cap. I know that there are fairly stringent size caps that I will hit eventually because I'm storing so much stuff in my Dropbox. But for that reason, I use Google Drive. The downside to Google Drive is you don't have that immediate ability to make alterations. In fact, it's a lot like using Tabletop's cloud, because if you make any changes, you're going to have to re-upload the file and then get the new link and basically rebuild the deck and re-upload it. That being said, I think it won't have any bandwidth problems, and you can at least go back in and redo the images, unlike with Tabletop Simulator. One thing that I have found is if you just come in with a new version of a file and it's, you know, named the same and whatever, and you drop it into your Google Drive and it overwrites it, Tabletop Simulator will not necessarily pick that up. That being said, here's the thing I wanted to get to. We'll right click on this, hit get shareable link. It should have been copied, so we'll take and paste that in, and it comes out drivegoogle.com and a whole bunch of gobbledygook. You change the word open to UC, and that, for whatever reason, allows you to link directly to the image. So right click, get shareable link, open becomes UC. That will allow you to use Google Drive for all of your tabletop simulatoring needs. And I think that's it. You can expect to see these cards that I've been messing around with next Tuesday probably. Hopefully gonna get into it and fix things up so it's all consistent and looking nice. Then I can release my DLC and it'll be awesome. Thanks for tuning in. If there's anything else you want me to go over in terms of card design, please let me know. Otherwise, go use Inkscape and disregard all of the above. I expect at the end of the month I'll be putting out another video about Sentinels card design. I don't know if anyone's gonna care, but we'll find out. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Alright, how do I do this again? Path tool? So, I forget how to use this. I don't know why I made the ellipse. Why? You can create all kinds of weird looking lines. Messing with the paths tool is a lesson in frustration. There's a reason I don't use these very much. Oh wow. Whoa, it's not working. Whatever. Nope, not that. Does nothing. Go with the flow, and I'll be damned if I can remember what I'm doing. That doesn't really help. That's not accomplishing anything. Let's forget this whole thing. Can we do that? And that's kind of the nice thing with these, because, you know, this image is no bigger than this image. Goes from there to there, and that's why it looks a little grainy, because I had to increase the size of it. But, you know, I did a sharpness tool, sharped it up like a card sharp. Okay, I need to stop talking now.